to all of you. Welcome back to our municipal electoral marathon. We're just going to dive into the race for Ward 1 District Councilor. We have two candidates, Maria Schiavelli Greenberg and Kevin Reif. Maria brings to this race her 8 years as a member of the Nonantum Neighborhood Association and 2 terms as a city council member. She's been a Newton resident since 1992 and works as a cardiac sonographer at Newton Wellesley Hospital. Her 4 children have all attended Newton Public Schools. Kevin Reif is a lifelong resident of Ward 1. He grew up in Nonantum. He's been married for over 38 years, has 5 children and 11 grandchildren. He recently retired from a 38-year career with Comcast, the last 10 years as an executive responsible for driving strong employee and business results. And for our audience who didn't hear the pre-debate instructions, the candidates will have time limits. Our goal is to fairly apportion the time, but we want to keep this as conversational as possible. And for viewers who were not with us yesterday, as moderator, I will interrupt if necessary to keep us on track. And if someone is filibustering, Chris Pitts will mute them. I trust this won't be necessary. It was not necessary yesterday. So let's start with you, Maria. What are your top 3 priorities and why?
Oh, thank you, Marjorie. Thank you for that question. So as a ward councilor, my primary objective is to be the representative of Ward 1, which compromises Newton Corner and Nonantum. So my primary goal is to deal with constituent services. So when a constituent calls me or emails me with a problem, I'm there to help them, whether it's to get a pothole filled, repair a sidewalk, get wires fixed on. I recently had a family who called me and said that there were wires down in front of their house and they couldn't get the city to fix them. And I contacted someone and it was fixed that same day. It's those kind of issues that I enjoy doing and want to do as a Ward 1 councilor. My second.
Well, you'll get to we. You'll get to we.
Okay.
You have to. Well,
yeah, I'm sorry. It's short in my answers.
Right, Kevin. What are your top 3 priorities?
Thank you. So, my top 3 priorities are public safety, education, and parks and recreation. Public safety, we owe it to the members of the community to provide them with a very safe environment while fostering a strong relationship with our law enforcement. Secondly, education. We need to be coaching our future of our world for excellence, both in the classroom and on the playing field. And going right into parks and recreation, providing our constituents with best-in-class facilities that are well-lit, well-maintained, and easily accessible to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. The city has been working on police reform for the past year, and some changes have been made. Kevin, as you mentioned here, and also I noticed on your website, you list public safety as a top priority. Do you favor the changes that have already been instituted? And what's your feeling about the defund the police action in Newton?
So let me take the latter first. I am not in favor of defunding the police. I think we really should go the other way. We really should provide our law enforcement with the tools and resources necessary so they can react to any situation that they're faced with. Their job and role is very, very difficult. And I think we owe it to them to put our resources and faith in them. With that said, I also am in favor of increasing the visibility of our police officers in our communities, remembering when we had officers that walked up and down the streets of our community, making our folks feel safe and secure while fostering a solid relationship.
Maria, what is your sense of this issue?
So I do not agree with the defund the police in Newton. I have a deep gratitude and respect for our public safety forces, the police and the firefighters. They have a hard, difficult, dangerous job, and we need to support them. I do support the hiring of Chief Carmichael. He has implemented many of the recommendations of the Newton Reform Task Force, which I wholly agree with. Community engagement has been enhanced. He has hired a safe resource dog, which is a wonderful addition to the police force. He hands out positive tickets. So that type of engagement in our community will only enhance the relationship between the residents and the police force. And I think that's such a positive way forward.
How did the two of you feel about whether Newton Police should wear body cams? And if so, should they be operated all the time or sometime? You can just, we're talking now. You don't have to.
Oh, okay. Well, I support that. I think it's a good tool to have. It protects the police. If the police are doing something correctly, it's on video, and they have proof that they handled their policies and procedures correctly. It protects the resident. I think it's just a good equalizer in any engagement between the resident and the police. So
Kevin, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that, I know many police officers in the city of Newton. They're wonderful, not only police officers, but they're wonderful citizens, right? And I think, wearing a body camera protects them, and it protects the citizen as both. So I would be in favor of that. I think it can be a very, very useful tool on both sides.
Yeah. One other outstanding issue I gather is that the state law created this year a mass police officer standard and testing commission. And even local people can go to that state commission. Some people in Newton want an independent Newton commission of that same sort. Kevin, what is your thought on that?
I think any independent source can really benefit the community, right? They can look at it from, somewhat of an unbiased and neutral fashion. So I think that could potentially be a good idea.
Maria?
I would support having that in Newton. I think it'd be great to evaluate our police with independent experts who can go through our policies and procedures and make sure they're up to date, best practices that will be best for the community. So yeah, I would support that.
All right, well, let's talk about zoning. The Zoning and Planning Committee had floated some ideas, a draft proposal for zoning redesign, and they seem to have what I think is deferred many of the most controversial aspects until after the election. So Maria, let's start with you.
Okay.
What is your position on eliminating or limiting single-family zoning in Newton?
I do not support eliminating single-family zoning in Newton. I just don't think that the majority of our residents want that, and I don't support that.
Kevin?
Yeah, I think there's a reason why that has been tabled, right? It's a very, very difficult reason, and I would not support a rezoning. I think it has many risks. There's a lot of pitfalls there, but I think it flies in the face of keeping our community inviting, keeping our villages thriving, and I just would not support that. And then there's a litany of reasons as we talk about the environment that can bring into as well. So I would not support that.
There's sort of a variation on a theme. State law now says that a simple majority rather than a 2/3 vote on the council can approve something like a zoning change that would allow multifamily housing anywhere within a 15-minute radius of mass transit. According to some estimates, some 70% of the city's single-family housing is located within this radius. So how would you vote on a zoning ordinance change that would allow multifamily housing to be constructed by right within that radius? Kevin?
I would not be in favor of that.
I think we're losing if you come closer to your mic.
I would not be in favor of that.
Okay, Maria?
So you're talking about the housing choice amendment that the governor approved earlier in January.
Right.
And I think we need to carefully analyze that provision to see how it fits in Newton. And I believe it's in a half mile of transportation.
okay.
It's a half mile. So, but we do need multifamily housing. We have a housing crisis in the area, not just in Newton, but the whole metro Boston area. And we need to address that. We have more jobs than we have homes for people in this area. So one of the solutions is multifamily housing within transit. So that will help address climate change. It will help address diversity and will help address the lack of housing that people cannot find in the area who have to move to Leominster or Fitchburg to commute into Boston. So I think that is a one aspect that we need to really examine and try to implement, but make sure it fits within the city of Newton.
Another issue in terms of development is the tear downs of smaller, older, quote, affordable houses and replacing them with much larger structures. And there seems to be an impulse in the city to control that tear down process. How do you feel about that? What, if anything, should be done? Maria.
Thank you. So that's currently happening under our current zoning regulations. And no one's happy about that. You take a small cape, a developer, someone buys it.
Excuse me, when you say that's happening, do you mean regulating it or the tear downs?
The tear downs are happening.
Exactly.
Right. Yes, the tear downs are happening. And most residents do not want that. They're not happy with it. So that's why we need to change the zoning and reform our zoning so that this is limited. That's why I'm in favor of redesigning our zoning to prevent this. This is exactly what the residents are asking for. They're asking for the tear downs to stop, and rezoning will help do that. It's one of the tools.
Kevin, I'd like to hear you on that. And also, how do you both balance the need for some control versus a homeowner's right to do what he or she wants to with his property? The idea being that for many people, all of their equity is tied up in their house and their retirement plans depend on it. Kevin.
Yeah, so, I do want to go back just for a second.
Yeah.
Just to address, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I do want to go back to just a second and the statement that was made about, multifamily homes. I think there's risk there. So we really need to be surgical and really need to be strategic about that. But in terms of your question, I think there's good tear downs and there's not so good tear downs, right? And I think the city council really needs to, be involved in this. But the other thing that we need to do is we need to listen to our residents, because our roles are to support the members of the community. So we strike a balance, make sure that the tear down is a right one. Whatever's going to be there, replacing that is going to aesthetically fit into the neighborhood. But I think it really requires us to roll up our sleeves and work with the members of the community.
Maria, your final thoughts on the tear down?
So property rights, of course, are very important, and there has to be a balance struck between what a homeowner can do with their property and what fits into the neighborhood. So of course, the city council will strategically and surgically look at that and make sure that the balance is struck. We will look at that and make sure that we don't have a huge duplex built, but that property owner will make as much money as he can on the sale of his property. So it's a balancing act, and we know that compromise has to happen.
All right, thank you. Moving on, Newton has been slow to fund its obligations on the lifetime pensions and healthcare benefits owed to city employees, the OPEB, as they put it, unfunded liability. That liability is about twice the city's annual budget, or according to some calculations, about $32,000 for each of Newton's 31,000 households. How will you address this unfunded liability issue? Kevin.
So, this is a debt that needs to be paid, right? I think we all understand that. But at the same time, we owe it to the city retirees, right, to live up to our end of the bargain. And, again, we need to carefully look at the budget and where the money is being allocated to and from. And I think I saw a slide about a week and a half ago from the chief financial officer that showed that, in one of the years in the future, we would actually have more money coming in than being paid out. But that's down the road. This is in front of us now. And I think it's going to take some real work to make this happen.
Maria?
So the city and the mayor and the CFO do have a plan in place to pay this, and it should be done by 2040. We put $36 million into this fund to pay back the OPEB. It goes up 9.5% every year. So we do have a plan. It's in effect, and it is appropriate and effective. So I support the mayor and the CFO in dealing with this.
So after decades of talk, something is finally being done?
Yes, thank goodness. And I think I'm very proud that our mayor took a really strong stance in this to make sure that this is paid off.
Okay, again on city finances, Newton from time to time has passed Proposition 2.5 overrides to fund schools and other city services. Would you support another Prop 2.5 override during the upcoming term of office? And if not, what are your ideas for generating revenue to pay for what the city needs? Maria, starting with you.
That's really difficult to answer without knowing exactly what that money would go to. If it's needed maybe for a new police station, I would support that because we're in desperate need of a new police station. The station that they're in right now is too small and inadequate and old. So I might, support a 2.5% increase for that. But I'm not sure. I can't really make a generalization of whether or not I would support 2.5 or not.
Kevin, what does your instinct tell you?
Yeah, I would. So if I can look at this through the lens of a private citizen, right? So the last override I did vote for, I think it, had its pluses and minuses, right? I wouldn't support another one. I don't know, how many times we could kind of go back to the residents and ask them, for another increase in their taxes to support things like that. But I am in agreement that our police station, needs some updating. I don't know if we need a brand new police station, in terms of relocating the building, but a definitely update is definitely in order particularly to provide them with the resources that they need.
Absent an override, do you have any ideas on how you might expand the city's commercial tax base? Anyone? Maria?
So I work very closely with the businesses here in Nonantum, which are very successful. We actually have no vacancy in our village, even during COVID. Yeah, and we've actually opening a new restaurant and a new bakery. So I have a close relationship with many of the owners, and I've helped them through the permitting process, supported them on social media. So I think that's the kind of support that businesses need to know that is provided to them when they come to our city, that we're there to help them, that we're there to support them, that we're there to share with the community how wonderful they are. And that will attract more businesses and commercial to our villages and to our city and increase our commercial tax base.
Kevin?
Yes, I think we need to be careful. And, I fully support, our small businesses, but, we need to be careful that we're supporting them and not just asking them for more, right? Because, a small business is a small business. Without the thriving community and the vibrant villages, those small businesses would not survive, right? So I want to be careful on, what we're asking them in terms of, their input. And then there are some of the more larger developers and the larger businesses that could really help us here in that place. So I really want to be strategic and sensitive to the small businesses in this.
Very good. Well, just for variety, I'd like to have each of you pose a question to your opponent in the race. Kevin, do you have a question for Maria?
I do. So, as a member of Ward 1, and as I was preparing to run for Ward 1 City Councilor. I subscribe to a number of the newsletters from the different city councilors, as well as, their office hours. But as I look on your website, I can't find, a newsletter, and I can't find anything that would indicate office hours. So could you, clarify that for me and understand why I couldn't find that?
So Mr. Wright, you are mistaken. I do have office hours. It was difficult during the pandemic, but we actually had a joint office hour with Councilor Leary and Councilor Oliver in Newton Corner in September. So we are reorganizing and doing that again in the upcoming year. You're right, I don't have a newsletter, but I do send out frequent emails to all the neighborhood associations, Newton Corner Neighborhood Association, the Jackson Homestead Association, the Nonantha Neighborhood Association, about local issues that are happening in Ward 1, which they aren't aware of. So I frequently communicate with the listserv owners of those neighborhoods and share that. So I find that that's the most effective way, because people are inundated with newsletters. We have the mayor's newsletter, many councilors send out newsletters, and people are inundated with them. So I think the most effective way that I reach my constituents is with emails, phone calls, and our office hours.
And Maria, do you have a quick question for Kevin?
I do. Thank you, Marjorie.
And try to keep the question short because we want the answer.
Okay. So the recent actions by the Save Nonanthan PAC accuses many people of trying to remove Nonantham's traditions, and it's such negative, unproductive, divisive type of information out there. And I'm wondering, since Mr. Rife was the treasurer of the PAC and one of the founding members, and is supported and endorsed by the PAC, how he feels about those negative accusations and falsehoods being put forth by the PAC.
Kevin?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So, I think the real issue here is the fact that a group of community members felt the need to form this group in the first place. In my eyes, that's the issue. The voter turnout in Nonanthan historically was the lowest in the city. Why? Because the community and the voters felt like their vote did not matter. They felt that they were abandoned and disenfranchised by their current leadership. The failure of 2 fire hydrants of one of our residents that resulted in the loss of their home in the middle of the night, and the neglect of our playgrounds are just 2 tangible examples of why this group came together. And it wasn't just a group of folks in Nonanthan, it was across the city. And the result of the voter turnout doubled. And yes, it doubled in the special election. This was a great example of a community coming together and really a civic action. And it wasn't just in Nonanthan, it's across the city for anybody that feels that their current leadership is not hearing their voice.
Maria, do you want to have a very
Yes,
quick?
may I?
Yes, very quick.
The lowest turnout was in Ward 7, not Ward 1. And they do not have a negative PAC. I don't see how any of this divisive, negative smear campaigning done by the PAC is helpful to any of the constituents. It divides the neighborhood. The neighborhood is divided right now. And I'm trying to unite. I reached out to Mr. Wright from the PAC after the special election to have a productive, cooperative relationship, and I was rejected. I was told that I should look in the mirror and not and just realize that the PAC is there and that what I'm trying to do is not effective. I reached out to them and I was rejected. I am trying to bring this community together, but their actions just tear it apart. And it's very sad. And the constituents don't want to see this. They want their issues dealt with. They want the roads fixed and sidewalks.
I think we have to move on. I think we have to move on.
I just want to say that I respect your opinion, but I would disagree that the community is divided. They're very, very united right now. you know,
Okay, that's,
the no
we
names
do,
of the
One,
voters.
one neighborhood, one group. in
we're
one
going to mute
neighborhood is
both of
divided.
you. We're going to mute both of you, okay?
Everybody's
We want
entitled to their
we do
opinion.
need
Just one group in one neighborhood.
We need to move on. Newton was surprised by a request to locate a gun shop on Washington Street, since the zoning code did not specify where a gun shop might be located, or for that matter, restricted. The operators starting construction without a permit enabled Newton to shape a new zoning ordinance that defines 3 specific areas in Newton where gun shops may be located. This is sort of a 3-part question. We'll start with you, Kevin. Should gun shops and other firearm uses be allowed in Newton? Does the new zoning ordinance do enough to protect residents? And can you suggest any better approach to the gun shop issue?
So I think when everybody talks about guns, they talk about gun violence, right? And I have never met anybody that's in favor of gun violence. I think the situation that happened in the city needed more transparency. And I think that once the issue was brought forward, I think that the council acted very quickly and came up with the zoning ordinance. And I don't think we'll have that issue again. In terms of guns and sales of guns in the city of Newton, I think they need to be very, very restricted, and they need to have a place. And also the process needs to be extremely stringent for this to happen.
Very good. Maria?
I don't think there should be a place for gun stores in Newton at all.
And do you have any concern about constitutional issues in terms of?
So that was my initial stance when this came before us. I've come to understand after meeting with experts and talking to lawyers and folks who are involved in gun control and regulations that the best way forward for the city was to have restrictive zoning. And I agree with that outcome. I think we should have strict zoning so we do not face a battle on constitutional level. But in general, I don't favor a gun store in Newton. I don't think it's a positive aspect, and I wouldn't want it. But I think we did it the right way with the city council. I think we did the right approach.
Very good. Chris Pitts, you have an audience question for Maria and Kevin?
Sure. Do you think public parks, playgrounds, athletic fields, and sports and recreation facilities in Newton are sufficient to serve our current population?
Okay, let's start with Maria.
I'm sorry, sufficient?
For the needs of the population. Parks and playgrounds and sports facilities, are they adequate for the needs of the population?
Okay, thank you. Well, we have many parks and many trails and areas of green space, but we lack proper fields. I'm happy that the city is finally addressing that. Our playgrounds need to be updated. That's one of my priorities on my top 3 priorities, to get our playgrounds updated. Their equipment is old, antiquated. It's not accessible to all children. So I think that more focus needs to be made on our parks. One thing that I'm very happy about, that there's a passive green space on Washington Street, and I'm proud to say that I've begun to have the city put in a community garden there. I'm very excited about this, and it's just starting. The mayor is letting us use ARPA funds to get that started. And the neighbors of Newton Corner are very excited about having a community garden for outdoor recreation.
Thank you very much. Kevin?
Sure. So we have a lot of work to do with our playgrounds and parks. And I think what is always the forgotten piece when folks talk about playgrounds and parks is our tennis courts. They are in really, really rough shape. And I've got around to a number of them, and they are in rough shape. But I also think that not only do we need to provide world-class and best-in-class facilities for our residents, we also need to be fair and equitable in the distribution of how these are used. It shouldn't just be one sport dominating the playing field and others have a bad taste in their mouth because they can't get on there. So best-in-class facilities, well-maintained, and a fair and equitable process for usage.
Great. I'm very sorry, but we have to go to closing statements. This is a little bit like speed dating. So let's start with Kevin and then we'll go to Maria.
Sure. Thank you so much. So what Ward 1 needs is a community voice, and I am just that. I have been in this ward all my life. I've volunteered for many, many events and many fundraisers and many organizations. There are certainly synergies to the volunteer work that I've done in the role of a city councilor. I spent 38 years at Comcast, my last 10 years as an executive. And during that time, I was really responsible for being a change agent, rolling out many new policies and procedures while getting the buy-in of the employees. I will stand up for the voters in this ward, and I will bring their voice to City Hall. I promise to work with my colleagues on their behalf. And at the same time, I will always be accessible to you. I will guarantee the members of Ward 1 three things. I will listen, I will research, and I will respond.
That's a good note on which to end, and because the stop sign went up. Thanks, Kevin. Maria.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for this forum. I appreciate it. I love my community, and I love the work of being a public servant and helping the diverse 11,300 folks who live in Ward 1. When I'm reelected on November 2nd for my third term, I want to complete my unfinished work, such as constructing the first community garden on the north side of Newton, passing ordinances that address pest and vibration impacts on neighborhoods during construction, and implementing traffic calming measures on Newtonville Avenue and Waverly Avenue. And of course, seeing the completion of zoning redesign. When I'm reelected, I promise to continue to listen to your needs and concerns and will incorporate them in my decision-making at City Hall. I will be the voice of Ward 1 on the council. I am optimistic that together we can become the vibrant, diverse, welcoming city that we desire Newton to be. I am that positive, forward-looking city councilor that will get us there.
Thank you so much, both of you, not only for participating in this event, fast though it was, and also just for being willing to step forward and contribute to the community. It's very important. We are going